Not bad, Andy. That's coming along.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. It's totally foreign to me.
Yeah.
But I'm having fun with it.
This is a great setup. Oh man, I should have brought my fiddle over here.
Well, I mean, go ahead and play that one if you want.
Yeah, well, I just want to know what tunes you're learning.
I have a very limited fiddle repertoire at the moment.
This is cool. Yeah, me too. I'm like learning like slow.
Yeah, have at it. That's like all Toys R Us fiddle stuff. So that's
cool.
But yeah, I mean, I'm learning like basic fiddle tunes. That's what I'm talking about. No, I'm right there.
That's a really cool fit. It sounds nice.
Alright, so this fiddle was a freebie. This was like a prop fiddle on the set of some kind of commercial that Leanne was shooting. And they were like, it was the bridge was broken, it was just a mess. But it was a prop fiddle. It's a cardboard box fiddle. And she brought it home and was like, yeah, they just were giving this, they were going to throw it away, basically. It's cost $50. This is a nothing fiddle. And I had a friend of mine set it up and put a new bridge and kind of get it going. And like, I got all this stuff for it, and it's like, it's a fiddle now.
Sounds good.
I mean, it is what it is, and I kind of got on this quest to like learn all of the bluegrass instruments.
Yeah.
Although banjo is one I have not tried to learn.
I tell you, the thing, man. Can you play a song? I'd love to hear one.
Sure. Well, I mean, let's get into it.
If you only want to,
Let's get into it.
Yeah, sure. If you want, yeah, that's
this is the whole idea.
Yeah, if you want to.
So I mean, if we're talking about like how many full complete songs I can play on this instrument, it's less than 5.
Yeah, sure.
But I can noodle, and it's more about what key. Like I'm learning keys, like key of D. So there's a ton of bluegrass in D, right? Right off the top, you have like some really basic. Whiskey Before Breakfast.
Yeah, oh
yeah. It's just a major scale, major scale, key of D, and then you can sort of say the same thing about another dozen tunes in G and A. That's about where my knowledge ends on the fiddle.
Oh yeah, I'm nowhere close.
Oh, this is probably out too.
That's cool. It sounds good, like the flow, the 8th notes, like it sounds right.
Well, that's the hardest part, is getting the bow hand.
Yeah.
You want to try and. I mean, I have no. I played fiddle in the 3rd grade in my, elementary school orchestra in the 3rd grade, playing fiddle, and that was. And then I stopped. That was it.
Yeah.
It was done. And so that is about the extent of the background I have on the fiddle, but I just think like it was always this kind of thing to me where if you watch these kids go out and just kill fiddle, so I'm like, all right, I can do this.
I can do this.
I can at least get to a certain level on this instrument, and I think I've found my limit, which is the key of D.
That to me is the right attitude. I feel like people. It's really interesting to me that and I understand how a kid's brain is more spongy and all that, but people will say like, "Oh, you're learning fiddle, like that's impossible." It's like
Right.
7-year-olds can do it. Incredible.
Right.
Like I'm not like
Right.
are you?
I'm not trying to be a
Yeah.
concert violinist.
Yeah.
But if I can play an old timey shuffle,
Yeah.
why not? You know.
And I think that's you can really learn anything. It's just a matter of patience. Like the fact that an adult who's musically talented can't like in 2 years get like some fiddle like satisfying fiddle music going on. That's like impossible, but like a 3-year-old kid can learn it. It's like sort of a strange idea. I don't know where it came from.
No,
you know?
I totally agree. And yeah, I mean, guitar has always been my thing, but recently it's been fiddle and mandolin tuned the same way. So you know, it's a lot of the same. You know, scales the same. It's the same exact tuning. So I figured out basically a lot of where my chords are, where my notes are on a mandolin with frets, which I'm used to from guitar. I've learned where the open notes are, where everything lies, and then you just put it right onto the fiddle. Now the learning curve comes with getting the intonation right,
of course.
And then your bow hand. That's a whole monster of just like how do I make this sound nice to the ear?
Yeah.
You know,
vibrato. To get into that yet?
I mean, you're talking about, you know, you're talking about minuscule measurements of where does the bow go on the string, how much bow are you putting into each note, and it's all right. You know, in general, it's right hand theory. So it's like if you're playing guitar and you have right hand. Bless you.
Thanks.
It's just one of the more difficult right hands in music. I think when people think about instruments and they're talking about the more difficult ones or the less difficult ones, you know, guitar is probably the most popular instrument in the world next to a drum.
Sure.
It's probably guitar. Does that mean it's harder or easier than a fiddle or a banjo? Or, you know, it's kind of. It's really in your head. It's a perception thing. But you know, to me it was a challenge, and I just kind of got this fiddle and was like, yeah, I love the sound of a fiddle. I want to play it.
Yeah, to me, like people misunderstand learning curve versus difficulty in general. Certain instruments have a steep initial learning curve. You know, if you sit down at a piano and play a C chord, it sounds like music, you know?
Yeah.
Whereas if you want to, your first day on guitar, you're not going to be able
Right.
to do that.
And even more so on the fiddle. The first
More
day,
so.
you're not going to be able to even play one nice note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So people really misunderstand that thing, which I'd call learning curve, how steep it is for like overall difficulty of an instrument. Because fiddle, you can't get really much of a sound out of it your first day, whereas piano you can. Doesn't mean piano is easier than playing guitar.
Yeah, right.
I mean, piano, you know, you can go so deep with that. So I think people really get scared with, if there's a bit of a tough learning curve, I mean, keep going, and once you get past that, it'll be actually really worthwhile, I think.
Well, yeah, and it takes time. Like, you know, we've put in the better part of a lifetime into just understanding kind of one instrument, but that sort of leads to theory in a general sense. For me, I learned guitar, and then after that, I learned what all these chords mean to each other, theory essentially, what the notes mean, and then I apply that to another instrument. So it's sort of like, I don't know, it's kind of like learning an extreme sport. It's like, well, yeah, if you're going to be the kind of guy who likes to jump out of airplanes, it's probably not going to be that difficult to learn how to scale a mountain face, you know. It's kind of the same bag. It's like once you've kind of conquered just the mental aspect of the instrument or whatever you're doing, the technical stuff is kind of just baseline. That's just sort of whatever. When I'm attacking the fiddle, I'm not thinking about theory as much as I am technical stuff.
Yeah.
Because I know the theory. I know, hey, we're in D, or hey, we're in G. Here comes a 5 chord. Here comes a 4 chord. That stuff is not the mystery anymore. It's more like, how do I make it sound? How do I pull the sound out of the instrument, you know.
What's driving learning these other instruments for you?
Well, I spent so much time around players. For a long time, the guitar was my only thing, and that's because I thought in my mind I was limited to that. I thought that I'm a guitar player. This is what I do. This is my instrument. And I still have a lot to, you know. There's a lot I want to really conquer on this guitar.
Yeah.
And I guess I was just playing a lot, touring around with a bluegrass band, and spending a lot of time with fiddle players, mandolin players, and banjo players, to the point where I could start to just like pick up on sort of like osmosis, like you're just absorbing what they're talking about and what they're playing, and hey, I took this break, and you hear what's going on in the melody as it hits the chords and all that kind of thing, and it just sort of made sense. I said, hey, you know what? I can buy one of these instruments and I can learn it. It's just strings on a box. So
yeah,
what's the diff? You know, it's
sure.
like sometimes I think like when people. I'm a reader. I'm a big reader. I will just read, even if I know I'm not going to like something. I'll still read it just to have read it. And there's this kind of conception that if there's a thing, say it's Lord of the Rings or Game of Thrones, big one, and there's this huge group of book readers versus non-book readers, and the non-book readers are all kind of like, you know, oh, this impossible feat, this impossible thing that I can't be in the conversation with. And it's like, no, you can actually just go buy the book and read it.
Yeah, sure.
It's like you can just go get a fiddle and just learn it. Like nothing is stopping you.
Yeah.
You know? It's kind of amazing if you think about that. Like it's like learning a language or learning basically anything. There's nothing stopping you.
Yeah. Except quitting.
Except stopping.
Yeah.
Right. So that's
patience is more important than talent, right?
Absolutely. Well, and that's another thing I want to talk about with you is how long you've been in LA.
Sure.
And sort of like how long, because to me LA is kind of like this contest of who can just basically last.
Sure.
Can you just still show up? Can you just still be here?
Yeah.
And this is coming from, you know, I've almost left town several times because I just gave up.
Yeah.
And what do you think about that? Like, what keeps you here in this city?
It's a great question. I've been here for 10 years, and I think we've all thought about that. I think once you get into playing music for a living, there are just incredible things that does to your life and things to enjoy, and I feel really lucky about it. But at the same time, you know, you think about the other side. People I went to high school with, what they're doing, that have families, that have stable jobs, that have 401ks, that get Christmas bonuses.
Sure.
And I think, or, you know, you look at real estate in LA and you want to buy a house, I mean, forget about it, you know?
Right.
So I think those things, anybody who's rational, it's going to be at even if you're enjoying your time here, I think you're going to think about, what if I had a normal job in Colorado? And I wasn't hustling all.
You had some land.
And some land. And, you know, I didn't have, you know, whatever. You know, you relying on a job where, you know, a singer feels like taking 3 years off and then you're out of the job. Or all these things, you know. So I think what keeps me here is that I really, really do love the work. First and foremost. And I love the community that we have. I mean, I think we're really lucky.
Sure.
Our pocket of musicians and friends, I just really feel like we have. You know, you read about. I'm reading Patti Smith's book right now, Just Kids, which I recommend for any artist. And she's like in New York in the '60s, you know, at the Chelsea Hotel, and there's Andy Warhol, and there's Jimi Hendrix, and there's Joan. Everyone's there, yeah. And I don't know if we'll ever see that again, but I definitely feel like we have something kind of special going on with the musicians at this time in this place.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
Yeah,
it's I felt the same way in the sense that, like, because I've been here for 10 years too. I moved here in 2008. So what year did you get here?
2007. Yeah.
Okay. So, and from Berkeley, right?
Yeah.
All right. So I did the same thing.
Scary fucking move.
I can't. Yeah. I mean, I knew everybody. Like, but, so you're at Berkeley, and it's just the greatest thing. You're just in this pool of talent and great thinkers, and I just remember that feeling of being immersed in. It was such a small world. Like, the outside world were people who listened to the radio and stuff like that. We would go to our parties, rager parties were like sitting around listening to a John Scofield record, and like listening to old jazz and stuff. And it was a really cool dynamic to just sort of be so. I remember having laptop parties where it would be like, hey, dump like 20 gigs of music on me, like just let me get some music from you and let's talk about music. It was just such a cool kind of environment to be in, with the development of everybody's musical sort of talent in mind. And then from there, it's like you go to New York, you go to Nashville, you go to maybe Austin, or you go to LA. For me, at the time, I chose LA, and I've been here ever since. Yeah. Did you ever spend any time in New York?
Just as a kid, enough to know I didn't want to be there.
Right.
Yeah.
New York is really cool, but it's a lot. It's a lot to deal with,
I think it was maybe even the teachers at school that term. It was like everything they were training you for seemed to be New York jazz, and it just sounded like every class, like, hey, if you guys want to make it in New York, you better giant steps, 12 keys, everything 12. And I'm just like, I think that you're making me not want to go to this.
Yeah,
it doesn't sound like me.
So I remember my Harmony 3 final was Donna Lee in solfege.
Oh my god.
John Funkhauser, great teacher.
You're like, I'm moving to LA.
But I was like, you're telling me I can go just sort of, hack it, basically. But so, I came to town and I sort of was figuring it out. I'm not from here, but I noticed the same thing. It's like, there is a community out here, and it's not as blatant as, say, Nashville or maybe New York, but it's there, and it absolutely. I was able to like work with that for a long time. Yeah. I mean, it was not hard to find players, to find gigs, etc. What were the first kind of things you were doing when you were here in town? Like when you showed up?
When I showed up, yeah, that's a great. I mean, anybody who's thinking about moving there, I think might experience this. I think I saved an amount of money that as a 20-year-old I thought was a ton. You know, I think I had like $5,000, which is like $1 million to a 22-year-old. And I thought, I'm going to get out there, get my feet wet, and I couldn't believe how fast it started to go. You know, it was unbelievable. And so I think very shortly I got preoccupied with like, how do I keep any amount of money in my bank account, whatever that is. So, I mean, lessons was the first thing. I mean, I remember I went to the Guitar Center in Sherman Oaks, is where I lived. I found a guy there, and I said, who sells guitars 7 days a week here? They said, this guy, he's here 6 days a week selling guitars to beginners. And I gave him an envelope with business cards, which existed 10 years ago. And, and I put like $40 in there. And I said, when you sell a guitar, give him a card. And that was like first month of LA. Just like started getting a bunch of students to just like make sure the bank account was like at least floating. You know,
I think a lot of players, obviously that's like a pretty common thing.
Yeah.
I did the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Did you have a style that you said that was your thing, or were you just guitar?
Guitar. Yeah. I should. That's a good thing. I maybe to have a style. I think I was just like.
Well, no, not necessarily. I mean, I did. I sort of. I had a Craigslist ad up for a long time, and I've a few dozen students over the years that were just. I was saying bluegrass. If you want to learn bluegrass, I can show you what I know.
Yeah.
And from who taught me. But that was very limiting, and it was very. it's hard to keep a student who, you know, is into a genre, into a style.
Sure.
But, you know, I think every player out there has taught lessons at some point. Right.
Yeah. What a great thing, too, you know?
And I mean, I learned from taking lessons, you know? What's your background with taking lessons? Like, did you grow up with a guitar in the house, or did you have to go find it somewhere?
It's so funny. Yeah, my older brother played drums and then got into guitar when he was maybe in his teens. So there was a guitar around. My dad played a little bit, so I didn't really pay. I think, you know, you rebel. I was like listening to Dr. Dre when all that was going on. You know, just Walkman. You know, a CD player.
Sure.
If you remember Walkman. So that, I think, and then my parents were listening to classic rock all the time. A dog named Fleetwood, you know, Fleetwood Mac, Eric Clapton, Jimmy.
A dog named Fleetwood. Huh?
Yeah, when I was a kid. Yeah,
That's
so
cool.
Second dog named Mac, which is too weird. Yeah, my mom was obsessed with Stevie Nicks.
Yeah,
and so that was going on, and I was of course ignoring it because that's what your parents like. You want to get as far away from that as you can. So it was like, for me, it was like Snoop Dogg, and then when my brother started to play, and then my best friend started to play. So then there was two people playing guitar, and then my second best friend started learning bass. And I think I like, you know, I was like, oh, I can't miss out on this. So my brother bought like a super shiny new, it was an American Fender Strat for $250, you know, or no, it was a Mexican Strat. He had a Peavey and he got like a Fender, and that was like a big deal.
I've got a Peavey right over there.
Yeah, so I inherited the Peavey because so he came home with a $250 Mexican Fender Strat, and then Dad said, you know, Peavey's yours, son, and I said, shit, great, and that was it, and I remember something. What I remember most is my brother was an ear guy, and he like said, don't look at tabs. You know, you got to figure it out by ear.
I was in that same camp.
Yeah, and like the tabs are like cheating. And I remember like tabs was like almost like porn or something. Like I would like pull it up on my computer and like look and make sure my brother wasn't around.
There was a big no-no.
It was a big no-no
about tabs back in the day. I remember that. I mean, now I look at tabs. I'm like, yeah. If you're learning like another instrument, especially, God, look at the tabs.
Yeah,
like, come on. But no, I remember that same thing. Like, oh no, tabs. What are you? Some kind of
So as a result, probably learned like a bunch of songs absolutely wrong.
Maybe wrong octave, or you're just like in the wrong register.
Yeah,
but no, I mean that's hilarious, man. That's exactly I can relate to that a lot.
Yeah, there was two schools of thought, right? So you were a non-tabber too. That's just get in there and
non-tabbers.
But
you know, I grew up with an ear too. I grew up in a musical household, and I could hear, you know, in the early days, I was hearing like chord changes, like, oh, the bass just played a new note. That means something to the song. So I was hearing, you know, harmony first, sort of the chords, and then with melodies. When you get into bluegrass, your melody dictionary just gets stacked, and you're just learning like notes, one note difference between this song and that song, maybe. But you're sort of thinking about like you're thinking about the harmony, you're thinking about the chords, you know, 1, 4, 5 for country music and bluegrass, and most, let's be honest, most pop, you know. But then the melody sort of comes in there, and it took me a little while. There was a disconnect between singing Happy Birthday and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, and then learning later on in college, learning what that's called and what those notes are, and learning solfege and like connecting the dots. I mean, for me, my musical journey is mostly about connecting dots that I was listening to as a kid, because I was, you know, surrounded by musicians and friends and family that were all just playing something, and it seems like that's a lot of people's common, you know, thing. Have you ever met anybody who's just like, oh no, there was no music in my home, I'd never heard music, and then one day I was just into music?
Well, all of our parents were so. That's what I wonder now, because it's like we listen to music a lot less, I think, because there's so much other things to do.
I don't listen to. I listen to podcasts.
I know.
I don't even listen to music anymore.
It's such a. I think about that a lot, because it's like, what do I need to hear anymore from this crazy news thing. You know, it's like sometimes I feel like it's just feeding some kind of addiction, and I need to listen to this to put on some good music instead. You know?
Yeah, and then you get it, and then you have the ocean of music that's out there, and you're like, what do I go backwards? Do I go listen to something that was 100 years ago?
Yeah.
Or older?
Yeah.
Do I go for what's happening now?
Right.
You know, this is leisure time. This is like, what do we want to listen to? It's like, well, I don't know. I couldn't even answer that question. Like,
yeah,
there's a million things I want to listen to, and this is something that happened to me at Berkeley. Did this happen to you? Basically, you go there, and you think you have your little genre that you're into, and your mind is just blown wide open to all these different sounds and all these different artists and stuff. And from there, I got into a million other things, and it's sort of been this back and forth game since then of just trying to figure out what music do I like. I mean, we should be able to answer this question by now.
Sure.
What
do you answer?
I mean, I keep going backwards. I keep listening to people that were earlier and earlier and earlier. You know.
Sure.
It's hard, and I understand I'm missing out on a lot of stuff that's happening now. Particularly with like EDM and stuff. There's some really respectable, good stuff happening, but it's not on my radar, and I understand that it's out there. I just am like listening to like Robert Johnson and stuff.
Right.
You know,
well, hey, you
like,
know, nothing wrong with that.
I'm going backwards here. So, what's your?
I think it's such a hard question to answer, but I've started to answer it this way, which is, I think anything that has a pulse.
Yeah.
As far as, and I don't even mean a dance pulse. I mean that sounds living and alive.
Sure.
And that's what I've noticed is the common thread, because I can't pin it down to one genre, but I think when you listen to Blind Willie Johnson or Robert Johnson, and you listen to like, you know, a really intense passage from a Beethoven string quartet, or a Cuban rhythmic sort of band, you know, Buena Vista Social Club, or anything, you know, like South American and salsa music, and when I'm listening to like really good bluegrass, especially the old stuff, and when I'm listening to really good, you know, programmed electronic music, it all just like, it feels like they're pushing boundaries, it feels alive, it feels like you want to be there. And I think that is what resonates with me, whether it's the Everly Brothers or whether it's, you know,
that's
Bach.
huge. The feeling that you want to be there, because the live audience aspect, which translates to multiple genres, right? Yeah. You know, part of classical music is that you're in the audience. I mean, you're silent and you're observing, but and then you have EDM, and then you have rock, and the point that multiple people in person in the same room, a big room full of people. So there's something to that. Yeah, and I think that can be lost a lot. It just seems like that human feeling, and especially gathering in big groups. You know? I think that can get lost a lot.
And it's essential, and I think it's easy to find music that is technically well, you know, performed, and everything's there. The chords are there. It's good lyrics, and it just doesn't draw you in to the room like that live Donny Hathaway record does. You know what I mean? It's sort of, I don't know. I think that's an intangible thing, but you feel it. It makes you lean forward in your seat. So I don't care what genre you call it. It's like, I think there is a common thread that happens with a lot of the stuff that I like.
Do you remember a particular concert or artist that just grabbed you and was like, you just at that moment thought like, yeah, I'm into not just guitar, but just this music thing? It's like,
sure. You mean like young, or recently, or young?
What age were you just like watching a concert going, wow, this is awesome?
I'll tell you, I mean, it's really clear because I always say in LA, everyone like retroactively edits their past to be more credible.
That's a good.
It's like, when I was 13, I was listening to Elvis Costello. It's like, no, you weren't, asshole. Like,
you're on MTV. Like, you know.
So I was like a Metallica, System of a Down guy, and I went to see them. And it was like it was Summer Sanitarium, I think. It was like Metallica, System of a Down, and it was so powerful. I don't know what's going on in a teenager that you need. Like, you're so angry at school and everything, and it was just I just remember it felt like nothing else.
Yeah.
It was like, this gives me a feeling, and playing music with my friends and then going to see this show, it feels like life is happening, whereas everything else is black and white.
Yeah.
So,
it was the highlight of your week because it was just so raw and cool.
Yeah.
I went to the Warped Tour, when I was 12.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is the best.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of it. That's I play folk music now, but and to me, genres kind of vanished a long time ago, because I've looked at certainly the guitar, because throughout all the genres, there's usually a guitar.
Yeah.
Classical music, there's no guitar, but there's classical guitar, which is a whole genre unto itself. So it's kind of like there is classical guitar. There is guitar in that genre. But I just remember at that age, what about the guitar? It's the guitar versus the drums, versus the bass, or why the guitar? Why is the guitar such a piece of rock and roll and every crossover genre of all time? There's one common denominator. It's the guitar.
Yeah.
And that really kind of was intriguing to me as a kid. And I grew up with a lot of instruments in the house and was just like, I'm going to explore this. And I had not the best gear. I had cheap gear, but a lot of it, and I had enough to say, hey, I'm going to learn the instrument and learn the theory and the stuff behind it, and I'll get some better gear later. Yeah. And that was sort of my mantra growing up. It's like, I've got this, crappy guitar, which the one they're all here, but I had a bad amp and I had a bad guitar and I had bad pedals, and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna learn how to rock out by learning the instrument. Did you ever take piano lessons?
No, I wish.
You never took piano?
That would have been
so
great.
What was your first looking into theory was on guitar itself?
I played trumpet and then trombone in the school band, but it was it might as well have been Spanish class. I didn't give a shit about it, And it's funny. I wanted to say something about what you were saying, the guitar-centric music. I'll get back to the theory in a second.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's because something fascinating to me is happening. When we're talking about the Warped Tour and we're talking about a Metallica concert or a Led Zeppelin concert in the 60s, I mean, the common thread is that, our parents probably didn't want us to be there.
Right.
Right? And that is it was dangerous. It was you may have made out with your first girl at a concert. It was just where you weren't supposed to be. And I think what's really misunderstood by a lot of musicians about EDM music is that it's the closest thing.
It's rock and roll.
We're this is this weird other thing that I don't get it. But it is where, if you're a kid now, your parents are like, why are you listening to that noise?
Right.
And they want to go, and they're gonna meet girls there, and they're gonna feel a little danger.
Yeah.
And guitar music isn't really how do we get that back as instrumentalists? Because I don't think we're at the forefront of that anymore.
Yeah, being a virtuoso has very little weight anymore. It seems I think that's a sort of a result of the technology, the recording technology. So back in the day, Doc Watson could put out a record on vinyl, and it was live takes of him just absolutely crushing some song on a microphone to a tape machine, and you listen back to it completely unedited, mind blown, top of the charts, just absolute crushing. Good luck trying to do that today. I mean, if you don't have all the bells and whistles, you're not going to get people's attention, and there is an audience for that, I think. But it's sort of like the way opera went, and in classical music, the audience is just shrinking and getting older. But that's the way it is. That's human existence. That's what we're doing here. Is we started, listening to hip hop and playing metal and riff rock, and here we are getting back into deeper folky stuff, and and we're also getting older, and now there's kids out there who are onto some whole other new thing, and it's like,
it's the cycle.
It's the cycle, but I think it's cool to be a part of it.
It's hard for me to be around loud music anymore. I don't like enjoying it.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm playing especially if I don't know, if a band is playing loud or if I'm playing with another guitar player who's playing loud, I'm just like, I feel assaulted almost, you know? And I don't know why it used to be such an escape, but now it's like, I just want to go home and I want to play with some quiet players. It's funny.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. I hear you. It's like, there's something about that overcharge of volume that is appealing to like punk music or to just rock, ballsy rock music is loud and it's uncomfortably loud. And the older you get, you're just like, not only have I heard this music and made this music, but it's literally physically hurting me.
Yeah.
To listen, even just to listen to,
to be in the same room.
To be in the room. And so that's just that's a product of age, I guess. But there've always been, and this is part of the ongoing conversation. Like there's always been guitar players who started young and were the young, rebel sort of guys who are now like old cats and they're still playing guitar. There's a ton of them out there. Yeah. It's kind of amazing, really, if you think about somebody like, obviously like Paul McCartney or some of these guys who've been out there for a very long time. And then a lot of blues guys are still out there doing their thing in their 60s and 70s. They at a certain time were teenagers, playing very, almost illegal music.
Yeah.
And again, just something about the instrument of the guitar is the common theme with those styles. Blues, you cannot discount the effect that blues has had on absolutely everything. Genre nowadays. Yeah. What's your like most recent gig that you've been doing?
Yeah, I just 2 months ago started playing on the road with Leon Bridges, which is it's such a
incredible,
such a joy to be there. It's like everyone's so sweet,
right?
I think the people are good. Or people talk about that a lot when you're doing a gig. It's like how nice are the people, and Leon himself is like could not be more lovely, and everyone in the band is great. So
what's instrumentation?
It's 2 guitars, bass, drums, and a saxophone player, and then a background singer. So the sax player plays keys sometimes, bass player plays keys sometimes, which they kick me over to bass, which is scary. Cool. But I'm pretty much playing rhythm guitar for like an hour and a half, which is great. I love that.
Nice, yeah.
He's got another lead player who's great, and then I'm just sort of holding down the chanks and the rhythm, which is like, I think that's another thing. Getting older, enjoying playing rhythm guitar.
Yeah,
I used to
when you're young, you want to just solo.
You're waiting for your turn to solo, and I think there's such a joy and meditation in trying to line up with the drummer and bass player and really trying to make that happen. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but it's fun.
Oh no, you are good. You're great at it. But no, I think you're right. I mean, I think there's something very, it's like artistic. It's part of you're adding to this whole sound rather than trying to just be the top of the sound. You're like adding to the groove, and you're playing as a rhythm section. When I was in high school, I played in the jazz band at my high school. I was introduced to the concept that the electric guitar was a rhythm instrument, and I was like, whoa. I've been listening to a lot of Jimi Hendrix, like, what are you talking about? Like, playing triads and doing rhythm stuff. But it's such a huge thing, and then when I got into bluegrass, it took that even further, because in bluegrass, the guitar as a lead instrument that's like 1% of the time you're playing rhythm. Your job is rhythm. You are the middle of the spectrum. That's your role in bluegrass. And when you're taking a break, if we're really going back to the traditional stuff, that's like once a night, maybe.
Yeah.
And then you have like trailblazers coming along, like Doc Watson, Clarence White, and Tony Rice. They're playing lead guitar, that has not always been a normal thing. That's sort of a new age,
Yeah.
That's like a modern folk bluegrass guitar playing is as a lead instrument. But it's a rhythm. You're playing rhythm. You're a rhythm section instrument.
How difficult to me. Like that's one thing. It's amazing how hard the bluegrass G. Everyone thinks that's like an easy ding 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 ding.
Oh yeah,
ding. That is really hard to get right. I mean, I don't. I think I've heard you do it, and it's like that's it. But most people I know, and I include myself, like don't quite have it right. You know? And it's hard.
It's very difficult.
Yeah.
And it's a thing that looks like it can be replicated, and so people try it all the time. There are recorded studio albums from bands that will go unnamed right now that are just literally that's not bluegrass. Okay? That is absolutely wrong. It's absolutely false. It's so much more nuanced than that, and there's so much going on there, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. 15 years into it, but
I mean, for me, maybe the listeners would be, but I'm curious some of the things that you do to separate what it is from that.
Well, sure.
Maybe I'll learn something too.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's kind of like acting, and if you just go into a role of act, you want to portray a character. And you just go for like the most, ridiculous, over the top, Ronald McDonald version of that actor, rather than start from the inside, start from the bottom, and see what's driving this thing from within. Sure. And with bluegrass guitar, this is what it sounds like to the final result. That's what the whole band sounds like.
Yeah.
But what the guitar is doing is essentially just playing bass notes. You're playing a boom chuck. You're playing downstrokes only. You're playing bass line, and everything else is incidental and usually being played by another instrument. So simplicity goes a long way. I'm playing Root 5, bass, all downstrokes. This is real basic stuff, but this is what, if you go back and look at, the early bluegrass guys, and then you start adding walking bass lines. Yeah. But you keep that downstroke bass chuck, boom chuck rhythm going. It's so simple that on paper it looks like, okay, this is 1 + 1. Let's move on. But it is impossible to overstate how important that concept of just boom chuck.
Sure.
This is essentially what country music and bluegrass just is the backbone of. And it seems ridiculous for me to say that, and people go, oh yeah, of course it is. Like, yeah, you're just playing the sort of Johnny Cash, like, you're playing this like obvious, almost cartoonish country riff, and it's like that's what I'm talking about. That's it. If you go above and beyond that, you're ruining it, and you're not doing it anymore. It's like. It's a style of simplicity, but simple does not mean easy. Simple means simple. It can be very difficult to play simple, and that's basically.
Yeah, I think it's rare to find even people to make that thing feel like the style. It's really cool. It's cool how difficult that is to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, me too. I've listened to countless hours of like Tony Rice, and his brother Wyatt Rice. Just a monster rhythm player.
Yeah.
And they get this sort of like sweeping, and they're sort of pulling the pick back. They're sort of picking back by the bridge, and they're getting this like real raw, just.
Yeah. That's it right there.
And if you really dissect that, it's pretty simple. It's just played with feeling. It's just got this sort of energy to it. it's almost like dissecting, bebop. It's like, yeah, well, all that stuff is just notes on a page, but notes on a page don't sound like this band,
That's cool that even when you do it, it's got a nice lope to it,
Well, it's all right hand. I mean, bluegrass, what I learned over the years, and again, I'm not some expert. I just dove into bluegrass when I was 20-something and made a living for 10 years off of it. And a lot of the things that I learned are basically, it's a show genre. Like, bluegrass is an act. There is the aspect of musically, what are we doing here? Which can be broken down, 1, 4, 5, G, C, D. There's also the onstage aspect of it and the offstage. Like, bluegrass was not born on stage. It was born outside around a fire in the mountains. That's where the sound comes from. So it's sort of like the natural habitat.
Sure.
And, every style has their own natural habitat. You could take jazz and take it out of a smoky bar in New York, and it's still jazz, but it really should be in a smoky bar in New York so bluegrass is kind of like that. Like, it sounds better outside. It sounds better than woods. That's the way it is. But what do? We put it on stage in a church or in a theater, and it sounds really great still. A lot of great records, but at its core, what are you trying to do? You're basically trying to tell a story. So when I'm playing a bluegrass song, this is all just sort of secondary to me. What I'm actually playing is very secondary. It's more about how am I telling the story, lyrically and musically. Let's get from the beginning of the song to the end of the song, and sort of, put something into the listener's mind and paint a picture.
So important. So easy to forget that, huh? That's like...
Well, it is easy to... That's another thing I wanted to talk about with you is, like, you've been in Hollywood. That's a gnarly atmosphere to be a musician.
Sure.
I mean, there's a lot... That's gnarly, man. There's a lot that will sort of get in the way. There seems like a lot of distractions there, and just like, how do you survive so long in such a kind of difficult uphill?
Sure.
How do you maintain your integrity?
I mean, I think it starts first and foremost with the people around us and the music that we choose to make.
Yeah.
I think you saw a little bit of the other night at
Yep.
at this thing we do called the Hoot Nanny. So, like, I'm really vigilant about spending time with people I really respect, with singers I really respect, with artists I really respect, making music that I really like to make. Sure. And I think it's easy when you're making a living with any sort of art form to have what I just mentioned sort of erode. Because it can be not at the forefront of your everyday, opinions and of what you're doing. So you can be really focused on making a living if you don't actually actively think about building like sort of an artistic community to make music that you love. It's going to fall by the wayside. It's not going to just happen to you in the city. So I really think putting effort into listening to new music, going out and hearing bands a lot that inspire me. There's so many great things. So if you go out and hear music that inspires you, and you're practicing, and then you're going, I try to have picking parties at my house, and I try to do these shows that are not based on how much money we're making, but are based on the music we're making.
There?
So I think if you're not actively doing that, it's gonna erode for sure.
I mean, that's a great answer. I mean, that's really like you brought up the Hootenanny the other night. That's a great example. A concert series in the heart of Hollywood, and you're bringing together a ton. I mean, there must have been a dozen artists there, just performing, and then people there. Like Adam Tressler was there. He's like, "Oh no, I'm not even playing tonight."
Yeah,
he's like, "I'm just hanging."
He always hangs. Tressler's the best.
Right. He's gonna be a guest on here in this podcast too.
What a player! Love that.
But that's the kind of community that it's hard to do that and to really make it work. And it's sort of I don't know. It's inspirational. It's like, this can work. We can have good players out there and good shows. And I think that's another thing is it's easy to fall into, at least in LA. I can only speak to LA. I've my entire career, adult life has been here since college. I cannot speak on the scene in New York or in Austin or Nashville or anywhere. But in LA, at least, it's really important to keep the quality up to a certain point where it's not just sort of gimmicky and I don't know. Again, this could be another thing of just me getting old, but I go and see a lot of up-and-coming singer-songwriters, and I'm really unimpressed. I'm really not blown away a lot of times. And I think it's because this is like a showcase style town, and if you're not ready to showcase what you've got, it could just be the wrong time. It's not there yet. You know what I mean?
Sure.
So I don't know. I think a lot of artists could really benefit from like 100 terrible restaurant gigs.
Yeah.
Then get on stage at so and so and show me what you got. But like, I don't know. It seems like I've seen a ton of artists who are just not quite there yet, who are getting up there and trying to do it, and it's pretty difficult to do. But the other thing is, as a player, I don't make it to a lot of shows anymore.
Yeah, it's
hard to go out and just hang at a show, pay the $10 at the door,
find parking.
You go in there, and that's like, once you've done this a million times, that's tough to actually get to happen. So it's cool that there's the Hootenanny to bring guys like that together. But what's the future of the Hootenanny?
Oh, it's basically a house band that loves playing together, and so we wanted to do more gigs together. So we were just waiting for singers to hire us maybe and get the other guys on, because it was always magic when we were playing together. We felt, at least it felt like that to us. So instead of that, we just said, well, let's make our own gig and invite the singers.
Right.
That's the most
beautiful.
That's the most surefire way to make it happen.
Makes perfect sense.
So we have every month, once a month, the last Monday of every month at Hotel Cafe, we invite 10 of our favorite singers down. They each get 3 songs. They send us MP3s. We get 20 to 30 MP3s on that Thursday, and then we learn them all and play it in no rehearsal. And it's
that's such a model. That's such a like old school model of house band. Like,
yeah, and that's what we want. I think the reason that I think it's been cool is because our intention wasn't anything other than playing music together.
Right.
I think the first one we did, there was like 10 people there, and we said, this was so great. We got to play.
Because the songs were awesome.
And we got to play together.
Yeah.
Like out of the house and loud through a PA. Like that's what we want. So now it's sort of turned into a bit of a scene, but I think we were never really setting out to like, we need to do this, this, and this, and present ourselves. We just said, if we can get on stage once a month and play, then we're going to be happy, regardless of who shows up. And I think if I were to tell anybody who's trying to do something like that, is that if you make it about leaving the house and playing with people you love, you can't fail, because it doesn't matter if anybody shows up. It's going to be great anyway.
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. If the band is having fun, or the artist or whatever, if you're playing good music that you like, the natural law of music is that it attracts people who want to hear that. So, if you put this into the context of, I don't know, not a rock club, but if there was just a group of people playing really great music on a hillside somewhere, other people around there are going to go, what is that?
Yeah.
Let's go check it out. That draw to the music, that sort of that music pulling people in because the music is good and because the performance is good and because the center of the thing is on stage. It's not anything else. It will bring people in. Like, cream rises to the top is the sort of generalizing saying, but the point is that if you're there having fun and the band is having fun and they're playing excitedly and everybody's got a smile on their face, the crowd will come to see that. You know, I feel like a lot of times in LA, and again, maybe other places, I don't know, people put shows together for the crowd rather than music. I mean, that's just sort of
sure.
That's part of the business. That's, you know, that's
right.
part of selling tickets and etc.
It's easy to lose sight of, again, why you picked up the guitar in the first place.
Exactly.
I think.
Well, exactly, and that's kind of like where I've just had I've been playing guitar my whole life and professionally for a while now. Doing a podcast about just this, just talking about the guitar. Like, this is why, let's not forget why we're here and why we love this thing is because it has this effect on us. Well, what do you say we play something here?
Sure.
What do you got?
Man, I don't know. Whatever.
What are you playing there? First of all, is that a Martin?
Oh, this is a 70s Takamine.
Oh yeah,
360S. So they got sued for copying Martins,
right?
And I mean, I think this was, you can get one of these for $400 or something, and they really do sound nice. This one sounds good with a capo on it for whatever reason. I don't know. So that's this guitar. It's like not bad, and I think if you don't want to spend gazillion dollars on a vintage Martin,
yeah, this is actually this is a rock bridge, and it's designed off of a Martin too. Like they basically took the dimensions and kind of made their best Martin attempt. So
everyone wants to be Martin.
Everyone's doing it.
Did you play that guitar the other night? It sounded great.
This is kind of my main axe. It's got it plugs in and everything. So,
oh, you want to pick a tune?
Sure. Jeez,
we could do the whiskey thing.
Yeah.
Cherokee Shuffle. We could play something slow.
You got Cherokee Shuffle in there?
I think so. It's been a minute.
Okay.
I'm a little out of bluegrass. So
that's okay, man.
So, right. All right. Sure. What are we gonna?
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Real nice.
Oh, man.
Real nice. Well, hey, thanks. Drew Taubenfeld, thanks for being on the Guitar Cast.
Andy, thanks a lot for having me.
We'll have you next time, and you've got to bring your steel next time.
Oh, man, I would love that.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Andy. This is a lot of fun.